So Martin Pistorius, in the late 70s, was a little boy growing up in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
To tell his story, we're going to have to leave the question of thoughts for 2 or 3 minutes, but it will circle right on back, okay? But it all begins when he was 3 years old, and he marches into his parents' bedroom and tells them that when he grows up, he wants to be what he calls an electric man.
He used to insist that we buy him all sorts of electronic equipment.
Resistors and transistors and you name it.
These are his parents, Joan and Rodney Pistorius.
And he would build us things.
Things like a flashing star for their Christmas tree, an alarm system to keep his little brother out of his Legos.
We had a broken plug. I thought nothing of it. I just said, Martin, please just fix the plug for me. He has live electricity in the house. And I'm asking a child younger than 11 to fix it. And he did.
Where do you think he picked this up?
I have no idea. He was always going to be an electric man, as he told me, when he grew up. And then
Martin's life took an unexpected turn.
He had just turned 12.
He came home one day saying he was feeling very sick.
And said, Ma, I think I'm getting flu.
But this wasn't a normal sickness. Martin began to sleep and sleep and sleep.
Like a baby, nearly all day.
And when he woke up, he'd refuse food.
Rod used to sit there and force his mouth open, and I used to put the food in.
He began getting nosebleeds.
So they tested him for everything under the sun, from TB, Parkinson's disease, Wilson's disease, deficiency in copper, measles, and everything was negative.
Still, he got worse and worse. As the months wore on, everything about him slowly closed down. His ability to move by himself, his ability to make eye contact, and finally, his ability to speak.
And the last thing he ever said, because he was still in hospital, was, when home? And all he wanted to know was, when is he coming home? And sorry.
Hi, Luna.
Hi.
He progressively got worse. Probably in the second year of his illness, he was sleeping whenever we didn't wake him up. He was permanently lying down in a fetal position.
And a test finally came back positive.
Cryptococcal meningitis.
The doctors told Joan and Rodney that Martin was beyond hope.
As good as not there. He's a vegetable, he has zero intelligence.
They were told to take him home.
Try and keep him comfortable until he died.
But 1 year passed, and 2 years passed.
Martin just kept going.
So Joan, Rodney, and their 2 kids did their best to care for Martin's body.
I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, get him dressed, load him in the car, take him to the special care centre where I'd leave him. 8 hours later, I'd pick him up, bath him, feed him, put him in bed, set my alarm for 2 hours so that I'd wake up to turn him so that he didn't get bed sores.
All throughout the night?
Yeah, every 2 hours I'd get up and turn him over and then get a little bit of sleep, and at 5 o'clock the next morning I'd start the same cycle.
That was their lives.
Load him in the car, drop him off, pick him up.
3 years turned to 4.
Bath him, feed him, put him in bed.
4 years turned to 5.
5 o'clock the next morning, I'd start the same cycle.
6 years, 7 years.
Load him in the car, drop him off, pick him up.
8.
Load him in the car, drop him off, pick him up.
9, 10.
And it was so horrific.
Joan remembers vividly going up to him one time and saying,
I hope you die. That's a horrible thing to say. Just wanted some sort of relief.
11 years, 12.
Load him in the car, drop him off, pick him up.
Was there any life inside?
I was not certain.
It was impossible to know.
My mind had decided he died.
Yes, I was there. Not from the very beginning, but about 2 years into my vegetative state, I began to wake up.
This is Martin.
Yes. Using the grid to speak.
The grid is just a computer keyboard that allows him to quickly choose words and then have the computer read them out loud.
Yeah.
Now, I will get to how he regained consciousness and developed the ability to operate a keyboard and the wheelchair that he uses to get around. But what you need to know is that for about 8 years, while all the world thought that Martin was gone, he was wide awake.
I was aware of everything, just like any normal person.
He thinks he woke up about 4 years after he first fell ill, so when he was about 16 years old.
I suppose a good way to describe it is like an out-of-focus image. At first you have no idea what it is, but slowly it comes into focus until you can see it in crystal clarity.
And somewhere in this reawakening to the world, Martin realized to his horror that he couldn't move his body. He couldn't even speak.
I stare at my arm, willing it to move. Every bit of me condenses into this moment.
Martin would later write a book about this called Ghost Boy, my escape from a life locked inside my own body. And this is him reading a passage about one night when he tried as hard as he could to get his father's attention.
I am sitting in my bed. My heart is beating as my father undresses me. I want him to know, to understand that I've returned to him.
But nothing in his body would obey.
My father doesn't recognize me.
It went like this again and again. Attempt.
Dad, can't you see?
And failure. Attempt and failure.
Everyone was so used to me not being there that they didn't notice when I began to be present again.
Though he could see and understand everything, it didn't matter.
The stark reality hit me that I was going to spend the rest of my life like that. Totally alone.
And when he finally accepts this, that he truly is trapped, he said it was like something broke open in his mind, and it unleashed a fury of thoughts.
I am totally alone. You are pathetic. Totally alone. You are powerless. Totally alone. You will be alone forever. Alone forever. Alone forever.
He said the thoughts literally battered him.
You are doomed.
Humiliated him.
Your family doesn't see you anymore. You will never get out.
So here is another man overrun by thoughts.
You will never get out. You are pathetic, powerless, totally alone.
But unlike the rest of us, he can't call a friend to talk about it. He can't go on a run to clear his head. He can't even move his position in his chair. He is trapped in his head. And so what does he do? Well, one day he just intuitively invents the very therapeutic technique that so helped the man in our last story, S. Martin just starts detaching from his thoughts. He refuses to engage them and lets them all just float by. And he says he got really good at it.
You don't really think about anything. You simply exist.
Can you describe what that feels like? I wondered, is it peaceful or...
No, I wouldn't say it is peaceful. It's a very dark place to find yourself because in a sense you are allowing yourself to vanish. Days, if not weeks, can go by as I close myself down and become entirely black within. A nothingness that is washed and fed, lifted from wheelchair to bed.
Sometimes the nurses were careless with him. They'd pour scalding hot tea down his throat or leave him in cold baths, sitting all alone. One of the nurses even began to intentionally abuse him.
You are powerless.
But instead of allowing himself to feel the sting of these thoughts,
I sit for hours each day staring blankly into space.
Though there was one thought he'd allow himself to engage and savor.
I prayed and wished with all my might to die.
So that, my friend, was his experience of letting thoughts go. Though, occasionally there were these things.
You can always count on having a fun day.
These things that provided a kind of motivation. Like Barney.
I love you, you love me.
I cannot even express to you how much I hated Barney.
We're a happy...
See, since all the world thought that Martin was basically a vegetable, they would leave him propped up in front of the TV watching Barney reruns, hour after hour, episode after episode, day after day. And one day, he decided he'd had enough. He needed to know what time it was. Because if he could know what time it was, he could know when it would end. And specifically, how much closer he was to his favorite moment in the day.
Simply to make it to when I was taken out of my wheelchair, and that for a brief moment the aches and pains in my body could subside.
Now, the problem was that Martin was rarely seated near a clock. So he calls upon these old allies, these thoughts, to help him carefully study the lengths of the shadows.
I would watch how the sun moved across the room, or how a shadow moved throughout the day.
And he begins to match what he sees with little bits of information he's able to collect. What he hears on the television, a radio report, a nurse mentioning the time. It was a puzzle to solve. And he did it. Within a few months, he could read the shadows like a clock.
Yes, I can still tell the time of day by the shadows.
It was his first semblance of control. Simply knowing where he was in the day gave him the sense of being able to climb through it.
Yes.
And this experience ultimately led him to start thinking about his thoughts differently.
I think your thoughts are integrally connected to and part of you.
He realized that they could help him. And so he starts listening to them again.
I'd have conversations with myself and other people in my head.
And if a particularly dark thought came up,
you are pathetic, powerless.
He'd try to contend with it. Like one time, shortly after having the drool wiped from his chin by a nurse.
You are pathetic.
He happened to notice a song playing on the radio.
Whitney Houston was singing The Greatest Love of All. In the song she says, no matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity.
They can't take away my dignity.
I sat there and thought, you want to bet?
The point is, re-engaging with his thoughts transformed his world. Life began to have purpose.
Oh, absolutely. I would literally live in my imagination, sometimes to such an extent that I became oblivious to my surroundings.
Which, you know,
load him in the car, drop him off, pick him up.
Could be rough.
I hope you die.
He was conscious when his mom told him that.
Oh, that's horrific when I think about it now.
He was staring right back at her.
The rest of the world felt so far away when she said those words.
But this time when the dark thought came up,
no one will ever show me tenderness.
He leaned into it and began to wrestle with it. Why would a mother say that? Why would my mother say that?
As time passed, I gradually learned to understand my mother's desperation.
He realized that it came from profound love for him.
Every time she looked at me, she could see only a cruel parody of the once healthy child she had loved so much.
Which actually made him feel closer to her. And so onward he went, trying now to understand his dark thoughts, instead of just ignoring them all. Which brings me to the last act of his story, the way in which Martin is able to climb out. This is a long story involving inexplicable neurological developments, a painstaking battle to prove his existence in the face of doubt, and...
Anyway, the short version.
The short version is that over time, Martin slowly regained some control of his body. By the time he was in his mid-20s, he could squeeze your hand on occasion, and he was getting better and better at holding himself upright in his chair. Now, the doctors told his parents that he still had the intelligence level of a 3-month-old baby. But one nurse named Verna, was convinced that there was something there. And so she eventually convinced his parents to get Martin reassessed at another medical center, where he was given a test where he had to identify different objects by pointing at them with his eyes. And he passed. Not with flying colors, but he passed.
I then gave up my job.
That's his mom again, Joan, who came home to care for Martin, help him with his physical therapy, and most important, purchased this kind of joystick for the computer.
A proximity switch, which was just something that you knocked.
And though it took him about a year to get the hang of it,
we had like school, if you want to call it, 4 hours in the morning every single day.
Once he did, everything changed, because suddenly he had a way to select the words he wanted to say.
I am cold. I am hungry. I want toast.
And as words came back, gradually, so did other things.
He started moving his eyes and moving his head and almost nodding, asking for coffee by stirring his hands around and things like that.
They couldn't really explain it, but
when he gets the tools to communicate, he forges ahead.
Okay, so wherever you are standing in your life, prepare to be lapped. Within 2 years of passing that assessment test, Martin gets a job, filing papers at a local government office.
I wanted to prove that I could do more than just speak words via a laptop.
Around this time, his nurse savior, Verna, mentions she's having trouble with her computer. And Martin, who has not tinkered with electronics since he was 12 years old, fixes it.
Repairing a computer is a bit like going into a maze. You might go down dead ends, but eventually you find your way through.
It was absolutely flabbergasting. I couldn't understand it.
Wow. After that, he scraps the government job, starts a web design company, gets into college.
And computer science.
He writes a book.
He's learning to drive. He always wanted to drive.
He's learning to drive?
Yes.
Wow.
Martin achieves everything he wants to do.
So how is it that Martin has been able to achieve all this? Now, I don't want to oversimplify it because it was many things. Martin's naturally strong will, flukes of electricity in the brain, a really dedicated family. But I do think that his decision to lean back into those thoughts way back when, instead of just spending his life detaching, in some way helped him. In part because it probably kept his mind occupied and allowed him to emerge this kind of well-oiled machine of mental ability. But also because I think his leaning into those dark thoughts in particular gave him a kind of self-understanding and humor about the human condition that allowed him to snag the very best thing in his life.
He's just typing.
My wife.
This is Martin's wife.
Jonah.
When Martin talks about me or types about me, I always start smiling.
Jonah was a friend of Martin's sister, and the two of them first met over Skype.
I was a manager for the social work team, for hospital social work team.
And Jonah says the thing that drew her to Martin...
I turned around and it was just this guy with this big smile, and he had such a warm personality.
...was the way he began to interact with her.
Unfortunately, I'm one of those people, I say something and then I more often need to say, sorry, I said it.
But not with Martin, when she asked him how things work in the bathroom or what people do around you when they think you are not there.
If I ask him anything, he'll give me an honest answer.
And that pricked her ears.
There was no pretense.
That first night they talked for hours.
She would speak, and I would type my response.
The sister and the other friends drifted away, and Jonah just stayed there in front of the screen.
I just really liked him.
After that, she just kept wanting to Skype with him.
Yeah. Okay, well, he's in a wheelchair and he doesn't speak, but I love this guy. He's amazing. It just so quickly turned into love.
As for Martin, after over a decade convinced that he would be alone forever, He was pretty happy.
My face would hurt from smiling so much.
They were married in 2009. Martin was 33 years old.